You may remember I did a video on the Intel Arc A750 a couple of weeks back. This is the 8GB variant. Now the 16GB, the A770, is really difficult to get samples of from Intel, but then I remembered that Acer do a Predator BiFrost edition. So today we're going to do an unboxing of this card, do an overview and then also some benchmarks. But first I need to pay some bills, so here's a sponsor message, actually also from Acer. Looking for a laptop for the new school term? Acer's Predator Neo has you covered for all of your school and gaming needs. Powered by an Intel 13th Gen i7 processor and Nvidia RTX 4060 graphics, the Predator Neo has its performance on tap. Whether doing heavy CPU intensive schoolwork or playing your favourite games on its gorgeous 165Hz Quad HD screen, the Neo is always ready to perform. On the topic of games, you can also enjoy some of the latest and greatest games with the free month of Microsoft Game Pass included with select laptops and PCs, featuring titles such as Starfield, Forza Motorsport, Minecraft Legends and many more. Visit the link down below to learn more. So the Predator BiFrost edition of the A770 is the same as the Founders Edition, or the Limited Edition is what Intel call it. You've still got 220 MHz on your core clock, and then the 16GB of RAM that you'd see on the A770. It does have a little bit more wattage than the standard one, so you've got 252 watts over the standard 228. If you wanted to dabble in overclocking, you might get maybe 2% more. It's just a little thing that you can have a little play around with if you want to. But I expect the majority of people will just leave it as it is. Now I do want to quickly mention that the unboxing experience might be a little bit different because this is a rotated press sample, as you can tell by the dings that are all over it. Don't know how people manage it, but yeah, some things might be a little bit different from your experience if you were to buy this card. There's a USB stick which I'm presuming is going to have some drivers on, but of course use the latest ones off the Intel site. It also has the same amount of Xe cores like the A770, A750 as well, so you've got 32 Xe cores. Now the price for this card at the moment is all over the place. eBay are trying to sell it for 549 quid, which is the same price as the 7700 XT, so don't touch it with a barge pole at that price. I do remember seeing it on there for 339, which is the price I'm going to compare it at today. You can find it still at that price online. It may be because they've stopped production of the A770, they just thought we'll jack up the prices as it's now limited samples and just see if anyone kind of bites with it, but 339 is where I'm going to go for a review point. So design of the card, obviously wildly different from the limited editions from Intel. We've got two different fans on this. We've got the Aeroblade 3D on the left, which is an all metal fan. In terms of the size of these fans, we've got a little ruler here, so we're looking at about 70mm for the Aeroblade, and then the Axel Frostblade 2, which is the right hand one, is looking to be at 90mm, so kind of standard size. So we've got, yeah, very different design. Of course it does go through to the heatsink at the top as well. We've got like a notch design. I think it's going to be a very Marmite thing. You're either going to like it or you're going to hate it, so that's obviously up to you. On the top we've got a bit of plastic with the Intel A770. There's also a Predator logo in there. You can't really see it at the moment, but I'm presuming that will light up. You've got to catch the light just right there. There we go, you can see it now. We'll obviously look at the card lit up later on. There is software you can control the RGB that's on there and set up profiles and things like that as well, so we'll look at that further in the video. Very short PCB on this card, but we do have the heatsink which extends further. You can see 4 heat pipes through there, and then of course the Axel blade fan on the other side will push that air through. There's a kind of double backplate design. We've got one that's going this way and of course the one that's going this way, so a little bit different from what we've generally seen for backplates that are just one solid piece. There's not that much that we can really see inside the card. It's a very dense card, so it is hard to see anything through it. So the power connector for this one, we do have 2 8-pins, whereas the A750 has got an 8 and a 6, and I believe the A770 has also got an 8 and a 6 as well, so we have got a little bit more power, but as I did mention, this does have a higher TDP at 252 watts over the 228 on the standard card, so that's why you need the extra 2 pins. So last thing to talk about is the outputs. You've got 3 display ports which are 2.1 and then 1 HDMI which is also 2.1. Then in terms of resolution, that's up to 4 monitors and then 8K, so 7680 by 4320, any combination up to that. I think now all we need to do is get it into a system and see how it performs, also check out the RGB lighting as well and see if it's worth that extra money. So the graphics card test bench is at Intel 12900K, that's at stock on the Asus Z690 Hero. We've got 32GB of Kingston Fury RGB, that's a 5600 MHz. Then we've got the OS running from a Seagate Firecooler 530, 1TB. Cooling is the Corsair H170i Elite LCD, and then it's all contained in the Fantex Etho 2 Pro case. So first of all, we're going to do Starfield. I have already tested this at 1440p and it just absolutely crippled the card. So we are going to try a 1080p run at low to see how we get on. I'm not expecting the world, because we have seen that it's difficult to run this game even with higher end cards. I recently tested a 4070 Ti, and on high settings I only got around 65 frames, so it's just crippling cards at the moment. So let's see how we get on. Currently at 20 frames, 19. So this is what I said, don't expect the world from this card at the moment. We do need some AI technology, I think would really help out, but that seems to be something that's taking its time to appear on this game. We'll give it a go, see how we get on though. Currently around 25 frames with all those textures. Let's try and do some shooting. It's a little bit difficult though, because we have got, I'm pressing the wrong key. Really difficult to actually see what you're doing because the frames are so laggy. So not great, as we can tell. So we'll hope in the future we do see some updates that will give us some higher FPS, or at least some AI technology, because clearly this isn't cutting it. On to Dirt 5, I'm going to use the 1440p high preset, which we've run for every graphics card that we test. Everything is set to high. VSync is off. I won't be expecting high FPS for this because we are running a high preset and then also 1440p, but it does mean that we keep it consistent between different graphics cards so we can easily compare, especially to the A750. Average FPS of 64.8, so console-like results. Not too bad actually, considering we are using a affordable graphics card in terms of what's available on the market nowadays. Pretty good maximum FPS there, 135. The minimum dip there we see every time, so don't worry about that, but certainly a pretty good result, especially for 1440p high. On to Apex Legends, again 1440p. This is one that's all set to high with the exceptions of spot shadow text filtering and also the budget. Keep those more in the middle. But I've got a preset run I do for this one. Not expecting massive FPS, but hopefully we'll see something that's playable, console-like frame rates. We are actually sat around 63, 68 frames at the moment, 72. It does feel personally a little bit juddery, but I am recording this as well, so that is something to take into consideration. There's a lot of stress going on the graphics card at the moment, so that'll be why. So 84, 80 frames, 71. 1% low is quite low though. Around console-like frame rates though, so that's not too shabby. Again, we are running 1440p and high as well, so we are requesting a lot of the card. To be fair to it, I think that's a pretty good result considering it is an affordable budget card, especially in terms of today's standards. So for Crysis Remastered, I'm going to go for low, especially as we're running at 1440p. It's a fairly demanding game. Now, running up the hill, we've got around 100 frames, but it will certainly dip once the enemies start firing at me. So around 50 frames now, 30 frames, 40. Don't get your hopes up running 1440p because it's not going to happen. Let's see if we can get around the back. Now to 17 frames. Oh, it's really hit the bed for this one. I seem to have taken out most of them though, which is a surprise considering I usually get killed by now, so that might mean something, it might not. So now at 30 frames, if we let the chaos kind of stop, I'm sure we'll see a spike up in frames again, but that was chaotic in terms of the game and the FPS. So not one I don't think to recommend at 1440p. Crysis was always a demanding game. The remaster certainly isn't any different. So for Cyberpunk, I'm going to run medium at 1440p. I'm going to keep XeSS off for now just to see what we kind of get from the raw grunt of the card. Again, not going to expect miracles as it is one of the higher demanding games in the benchmark suite that I run. So immediately in at 50 frames, 40. Bit of a gap, there's quite a lot going on though. 45 frames, 56, 60. Okay, so we are at the console realm. Now we have got the option for XeSS on this, so why not use it? Let's go for a balance preset to begin with. We'll turn the sharpening up a little bit. I do like 0.8. I think that works quite well. So now, oh, that feels a lot smoother already. 64, 65. Now, the game feels smoother in how I'm kind of running about, but the actual frame rate is still around console levels. To be fair, it seems a little bit more consistent than without XeSS. It was kind of all over the place, going 40, 50, 60, back down, whereas now we do have a more consistent result, which is basically a consistent 60 frames. Let's just switch this over to performance. Let's see how we get on now. Right, let it level out. So 63, 65. That's not too bad, actually. Not too shabby. Although it is setting a little bit lower, it's certainly, again, staying consistent and it's not all over the place. There's a bit of a dip there, but we do have a lot of neon lights and things going on. But personally, if you're happy with the console frame rate, especially at 1440p, you know, you are pushing that resolution a lot higher. You can run 1080, of course, but it is nice to know that you can kind of step into the realm with 1440p, especially with this price of card. Last time I tested Far Cry in medium, so I'm going to do exactly the same. Everything is going to be set as the preset defines. It's a bit of a weird result there. When I tested this on the A750, we saw an average of 71 frames, so we're 19 less on the A770, which doesn't quite make sense. Now, I'm not sure where the variable is for this because I've got the same settings on the right hand side for each card. I've also gone back to the YouTube video to verify it's the same as well, so I'm really quite confuzzled where the actual variable is. A little conclusion then for the Acer A770. Performance wise has been pretty good, considering that I've been basically crippling it with titles that are really hard to run. Starfield at the moment just doesn't run well on anything unless you're willing to spend £1,500 upwards just on the card itself. Crysis has always been difficult to run. Cyberpunk, really difficult anyway with the engine that it runs on. But if you're happy with console frame rates, then you certainly can run 1440p. If you want to go for 1080, of course you can. You will get a little bit higher FPS, but I think you can step into 1440p with this card without any problem. Really kind of weird result there with Far Cry 6 compared to when I tested the A750. We ran it on the same driver today and it's very, very close. The BiFrost card itself has performed very well. If you're wondering about the RGB and things, I'll put a little overlay on the video that I recorded earlier, going through all the different lighting effects that are built in. You can do some more custom stuff if you want to as well. I'll also put an overlay at the software if you want to have a little bit of a look at what features are available to change. In terms of temperature for this card, I saw a high of 90 degrees. The room at the time was 24.1, so that gives us a 65.9 delta. So certainly a little bit of a warmer card. A couple of things also to note, I did test all of the games with this card on the default setting. So if you were to take the card out, plug it in and then just run it, I didn't see any noticeable difference by going for the custom modes and setting up the power increase to 252 watts, maybe like one frame, maybe two if you're lucky. You have to actually enable that yourself if you want to run that. It's not out of the box, which I think if it was on maybe the turbo mode would be good out of the box, but you do have to download the software, then enable that turbo. It's not default out the box. You're just going to get standard A770 like the limited edition ones if you leave it as a plug and play card essentially. There was a little bit of coil whine when I really pushed the card, but generally speaking there's nothing that's audible. I was right next to it on the other side of this desk as well when testing, so not hearing anything, obviously a good sign. A lot of people did report it with the Intel limited cards, so this one seems to be the opposite. A little thing I'd like to see implemented into the Predator Sense software is an option for a custom fan curve. This thing can go quiet or it can go loud. There's no real in between. Something around 2500 would be nice, especially like on a nice little slow curve. Even a solid area, when you get in between a certain temperature, go up to 2500 RPM, but this thing can go up to 6200, and you certainly know about it as well. It follows the last Acer product that I looked at. It either goes quiet or it goes loud. There's really no in between. So a little bit of firmware update on that software to allow some custom sliders would be appreciated. But otherwise, a solid card, and if you're happy with 1440p console-like frame rates, then this one is a solid option. Obviously just wait a little bit until Starfield's improved if you want to play that. I think that's everything that I want to cover in this video. If there's anything else you want to know, then do leave it in a comment down below and I'll get back to you. I'll leave the product links in the description box as well if you want to pick one up. Big thank you to Acer for sending this out for me to look at. We'll be doing some other stuff with this as well, so if you've got any suggestions on what you might like to see, then do let me know. Thank you all for watching. Get subscribed and ding the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.